So I'll do a roll call check-in. Kathy
Here.
and Counselor Debs
Here.
and Sydney Meininger.
Here.
Sorry, Kathy, I didn't use your last name. Jenna Perna Elias
Here.
and Emma Cornwell is absent and Rodney Kunith is absent. Um, so before I open it up to public comment, I wanted to introduce trying a slightly different way for public comment. And sorry, Court and Keith, I didn't officially run this by you. I would love to, it's going to be a trial to see if it works and to see if I can manage it as chair in a way that kind of works for everybody. So I'd love to offer public comment at the beginning, but also offer public comment at the beginning of each of the agenda items, so that if someone has a comment that is pertinent to, for example, the PSA, then we're hearing it right before we're speaking about it. And granted, we don't often have lots of folks from the public and lots of public comments. So this might be irrelevant, but I wanted to offer that up as some flexibility. It is dependent on folks recognizing, I guess in both the public and commissioners, is that we don't engage in a conversation with the comments from the public. So, and I know I'm tempted to respond like out of politeness or something, but people will comment and we take that information in, but it's not a back and forth dialogue. So as long as the public is clear that it's not an engagement, it's them simply giving public comment, then I feel like that could be okay. So we'll have this for January, February, March, and then kind of check in as a commission to see, do we like this? Do we not? Does it matter? Does it make it more complicated? But I wanted to have clarity around it because I was realizing in the last few months that I was unclear about how to handle public comment. And so that probably makes it really confusing both for the public and other commissioners. So here we are. So I hope that's okay with everyone. Of course, always open to feedback if you want to email me separately with thoughts. And then we can check in. So I will jot a note to check in. So at our April meeting, we'll check in and see how it's going. So without further ado, I believe we have one person from the public. So if you are here with any public comment, you can have a few minutes if you want to give public comment. And if you can say your name and where you're from, that is great. So any public comments?
Yes, Benjamin Kalish, Northampton, but I'm here also representing Forbes Library. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that Forbes Library has our Disability Advisory Board meeting tomorrow. It is available online on Zoom, and I'll put a link in the chat. It is also available here in the library. We're meeting in the Watson room. So that will be at 4 p.m. tomorrow.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Ben. And thank you for being here. Any other public comment? All right, thank you. Moving on to approval of the minutes from December 10th. Is there any comment on them before moving forward?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Great, thanks. So Counselor Dubb makes a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So Kathy Murray made a second or seconded the motion to approve the minutes. So roll call vote. Kathy Murray,
Yes.
Counselor Dubbs,
Yes.
Sydney Meininger,
Yes.
Jenna Perna Elias,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So they passed unanimously. Thank you all. So continued discussion about the possible edits, modifications to the complete street ordinance. I've been thinking about this a lot in the past week. And before screen sharing court, and I actually sent you an updated screen share just
okay.
right before the meeting. Sorry, that actually shows old language and new language.
Okay.
So that we can have that kind of right in front of us.
Just back here.
So I will try to be concise, but I'm not always. So I've been thinking a lot about this in the past month. Sometimes it takes me some time to, as things kind of percolate. I don't know if you all do that, but as things settle in, and thinking about different possible ramifications and what we're doing. So anyway, I wanted to say thank you to those on the commission who urged us to not vote last month and to wait until this month. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the time that it's given me to kind of think through it and then go back and read it again and really go through it with more of a fine-tooth comb. Very strange thing, to look at it. And so I'm going to, well, before we do screen share, I also just want to say that we have certain information now before us. And so we are charged with, given the information we have, to give our best opinions and thoughts on it for the disability community. And we don't know all the possible ramifications of edits, and probably, to be fair, haven't known kind of the effects of the current complete streets policy ramifications as it stands. So we're doing our best, I guess, right? So part of me is like, oh my gosh, how do we know how it's going to affect, X, Y, and Z if these edits happen? And so just a reminder for myself and all of us that we have what we have and we can choose all sorts of different avenues to go from here. Ask more questions, get more information, table it, approve it, break it down into different sections to do any of those with. So we have choices. And so I just want us to recognize that as we move forward and look at the details of it. And I will try to be clear in kind of my interpretation, understanding of it, of the details as we go through. Please ask questions, because I've spent some time with this recently. And so I know not everyone has had the bandwidth or the interest or the ability to do that. And so please don't be afraid to ask questions now if it's confusing, if you want me to talk through something again so that you can just hear it again, if you want to sit with it, and just kind of read through it and think through it. So really just ask for what you need as we go through this. Okay, thanks. Court, so if you could screen share.
Yeah. Let's see. That work?
Yes, that is great. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so there are 3 sections And I'd actually like to start with the second section and come
Okay.
back to the first one. So if we could
Okay.
look at B1.
Oops, let's see. E1.
Yeah, and as big as you can get it would be.
Oh, okay.
awesome.
As big as I want. Okay. See, is
Yes, actually,
is
that's
that-
great because I'm
is that
still going to
good?
put on my glasses, but
okay. Yeah. No problem.
you know, all help. And can everyone see that okay? Or do we want it bigger? It's okay? Okay, awesome. Thank you for the feedback, Sydney. All right, so what B1 is saying is that when streets are completely reconstructed, so torn up, things underneath the street that we don't see, pipes, etc. This is coming from a lay perspective, keep in mind, but so that's what reconstructed means, right? Like it's all torn up. When that happens, so what B1 is saying is cement concrete sidewalks on both sides of the street in the business, industrial, mixed use, and urban residential zone, urban residential C zoning districts. So those are kind of the hearts of Northampton. When the right-of-way width allows. So basically sidewalks, concrete sidewalks on both sides of the street in those areas. And then cement or bituminous, I'm sorry, I'm still struggling over that word, concrete sidewalks. So either the cement or the black, right? The black asphalt sidewalks on at least one side of the street in all these other districts. So within a mile of Florence Center, within a mile of the Northampton Central Business District, all K-12 schools, wherever a sidewalk would reduce the need for public school bus service, along any new street, in dense walkable neighborhoods, and in areas with clear pedestrian desire lines that will result in significant sidewalk utilization. So the edit there is saying it doesn't have to be on both sides of the street in those areas, but it has to be on at least one side of the street. And then crosswalks shall be provided at each intersection where the sidewalks are present on both sides of the street. So, and I hope you don't mind, I am going to put in my thoughts as we go through. And I hope that doesn't, I don't mean to bias people, but to give you something to bounce off of. So either, oh yeah, I agree with what she's saying, or, oh no, my take is really different. And it'll hopefully get us like a starting point for conversation. So for me, B1 makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of where the conversation began with Director Lascalia, Emma, and myself when we met, whenever that was, late summer, maybe early fall. So this, to me, allows for more sidewalks around the city for more people to use, instead of money being trapped in putting sidewalks on both sides of the streets, even when it doesn't make sense. And it would be, massive amounts of money, and, everything would go to this one little section instead of having more sidewalks on at least one side of the street in more parts of the city. I'm going to go through all three and then we'll check in, and then can kind of go back through each section individually after people have kind of heard all this stuff. So B7, roundabouts are the favored intersection. And so basically it's saying that if roundabouts can't fit or can't be used, and a signal is being proposed to be used instead of a roundabout, that information would be presented to the Transportation and Parking Commission rather than having them have to approve of it. I'm confused why this is coming to the Disability Commission for approval, and like for us to weigh in on it. It's taking approval away from Transportation and Parking Commission, and I don't have a sense of really what that means. Yeah, so I'm yeah, a little confused and perplexed by that one. It makes sense that sometimes a roundabout just physically really doesn't fit, and so a signal has to go in. The signal makes sense. So I'm not sure the dynamic there of does it slow down the process and for DPW to go and get approval from Transportation and Parking? Yeah, so that one I feel like is a little beyond my current knowledge. So again, you know, we can ask for more information, etc. Okay, Court, do you mind going up to the
Yeah, no problem.
first
Sure.
one? Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So this one, A11, to me really has two parts. So one is that mill and overlay projects. So you might remember Director Lascalia talking about mill and overlay is like scraping up the road. So it's not a complete reconstruction. It's going in and like scraping the top surface up and then laying down new on the streets, laying down new asphalt on the streets. And so sometimes there could be room for a bike lane or a sidewalk. And sometimes it makes sense maybe, and sometimes it maybe doesn't make sense. So they've added language to include a bike lane and or a sidewalk, whereas before it just said mill and overlay projects shall include sidewalks in the priority areas listed below, which is what we've talked about first, those different zones. So it's saying bike lanes and or sidewalks when it fits geometrically and when it's financially feasible. So that's the first part. And then the second part is that if they can't put in a bike lane or a sidewalk because it's not financially feasible or it's not, you know, spatially, geometrically, it's not feasible, then that would be presented to Transportation and Parking and the Disability Commission for comment, but it takes away approval from Transportation and Parking Commission. So those are the two parts to this one. And I don't understand the need to take away the approval from another commission. And it makes me uncomfortable for the Disability Commission to say another commission should no longer have that approval process. And I know it, I recognize it slows down the process for DPW. I recognize it's another step to go to a meeting to present the information and to have folks weigh in with approval or disapproval on the plan. And I am all one for efficiency. So I really I get that urge to streamline. but it makes me nervous not knowing who future directors of DPW will be. And to take away the approval, it relies on the integrity of future DPW directors. You know, that they prioritize accessibility in the city. And I have full faith that Director LaScalia does. My concern is for future directors, and that's unknown. So that makes me nervous to take the approval away. I would actually, I know they're not going to want to hear this, but I would actually wonder about adding the Disability Commission also needing to give approval for not, you know, when a bike lane or a sidewalk cannot be put in with a mill and overlay project, so that we can weigh in on it as well as the Transportation and Parking Commission. It would then go to City Council, and the city councilors, and I will love to get your take on this, Councilor Dodd, but my guess is that city councilors, if something's been vetted by two commissions, it gives information to the city councilors. Whereas if a plan has not been vetted by, you know, these groups of citizens who are on commissions for the city, then it must be a different thought process and kind of investigation that happens for city councilors as they're considering something. So maybe it moves the like the burden of proof from one group to another. So I'm hesitant about that, and I would really love more information about the bike lanes and or sidewalks. I am all for more bike lanes in Northampton as the climate catastrophe, you know, as we're all seeing, gets worse and worse and worse. More people who are able to cycle, I think that is absolutely fantastic. So I'm not inherently, you know, against bike lanes. But having, so that language I would be super good with if the Disability Commission was on there for approval, right? So that we could kind of run through the different scenarios and make sure that sidewalks aren't being passed over for bike lanes when a sidewalk might make sense and is financially feasible. So, whew, there's a big data dump or something dump, thought dump. Thank you for taking all that in. So I would love to hear, I'd love to hear from commissioners. And yes, please, thank you, Councilor Dubs. I was gonna see if you would go first with some of that, stuff. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for explaining all of that to us. It was very, very well said, and you made it very easy to process all of the information.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would just say that I think I completely agree with you about like the part about the Disability Commission seeking the part about seeking approval from the Disability Commission. I would definitely agree with that. And then from a counselor's perspective, I would say that what you said is exactly right. Whenever we are making decisions at City Council, it's always helpful to have the approval or disapproval of one of the committees. It just helps us to know, like, we don't have to agree with the committee as a council, but it just helps us to make our decision. Like if these counselors, if these people on the committee disapprove or approve of something, it informs our decision a lot. So, for example, we get financial orders at city council where we have to approve or not approve of a certain amount of money being spent on a project, and we almost always send those financial orders to the finance committee, and then the finance committee will have their own discussion at their meeting, and then they will report back to the city council. And so I personally think that's a good process. I think it's a helpful process for everybody to make an informed decision. So yeah, so I would just agree with you on that, and also in terms of the part about taking away approval from the Transportation and Parking Commission, I would agree with you that I feel like we're not really qualified to make that decision, or like we're not on the Transportation and Parking Commission. We don't know how the members of that commission feel about this. I wouldn't want to make a decision that's gonna upset people on the Transportation and Parking Commission, because I don't know enough about what they're doing at their commission to make that decision. So I guess maybe a suggestion I would make is that possibly maybe we could like ask Director Lascalia, or whoever we need to. Maybe we could like specify when we vote, like that maybe we could specifically vote about the Disability Commission, but not make our vote related to the Transportation and Parking Commission, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
also specifically for the second part of part B, where they if court, do you mind scrolling down just for a second to the second part of B?
B7, yeah.
Yeah, B7, thanks. Um, yeah, like that last part about taking away the taking away the ability of the Transportation and Parking Commission to approve that. I just feel like that's not something that I personally think that we shouldn't vote on that. Like, I don't think that should be up to us. So I guess my request or suggestion would be that everything that we vote on should be specifically about the Disability Commission. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So yeah, so I guess those are my main thoughts.
Great,
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks.
Thank
Yes.
you. And sorry, while you have the floor, B1, how do you feel about the one about sidewalk
Oh,
on at least one side of the sidewalk and then the crosswalks?
I feel okay about that, and yeah, that looks reasonable to me.
Mhm. Great, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, Counselor Dubs.
thank you.
Kathy, Sydney, or Jenna, do you have thoughts that you can share on those sections? Kathy, go ahead, thanks.
I really appreciate that you took the time to analyze all of this and present it so clearly. And I agree with all your comments on all three sections. I think, those are good catches in terms of, who the body approving these changes are. And I thought all of your suggestions were great.
Okay. Thanks for your voice, Kathy.
I go next. That's right.
Yeah, Jenna, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you, Amy, for doing all of this work and bringing us back into it. I agree with everything that's been said about B1 and B7. I do have two questions or concerns that I want to bring to everyone about A. One of them is adding in the part that used to just be sidewalks and now it's sidewalks or bike lanes. I totally agree with Amy. I think that in an ideal world, there would be bike lanes all over Northampton, anywhere that's feasible. My only concern is that if that's in there, there are spots where there would be a sidewalk, but now instead of them getting a sidewalk, there will be a bike lane. And I just view it as less people can have access to it then. And my other concern not to like really harp on this. If no one else cares, we can just let it go. But using the geometrically and financially feasible, the geometrically part feels a little bit like a cop out to me. I've heard that argument used a lot against making places accessible. And I think ultimately it always just comes back to money, or like money and time. And so I kind of think it's an unfair argument to say a spot could not be made accessible. I kind of don't believe that. We just choose not to sometimes.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate hearing all those thoughts, Jenna. Sydney, do you have thoughts you're willing to share?
One of my thoughts is like we're not on like the transportation board, so I don't want to like suddenly have all like the decisions come to us and then all their ideas get turned down because of us. And I don't want it to turn into, oh, disability commission says we can't do this, and then they feel like they can't make any decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But I also agree with the fact that where they're thinking of putting like bike lanes and sidewalks, you don't want to get to a point where it's not really accessible for people to get around.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so given your input and thoughts, Court, can you go to B7? Thank you. Sorry, I can't do it myself. I'm on this old computer that doesn't let me screen share, and I need to investigate it. But anyway, thank you for doing that for us, Court. So I'd like to break this up into at least 3 parts, and I'm saying at least because when we look at that first one, we might want to break it up into 1, 2, or 3 parts. So for B7, I would like to propose that we vote on our vote that we don't want to vote on this. What's the language? So anyone jump in and help me out.
Maybe we could vote to remove this section. Is that what, maybe, or something like that? Or at least remove it from our vote. Does that make sense? I don't even know if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah. Thank you. To that the Disability Commission does not feel equipped to weigh in on this edit. Can anyone add to that to make it a little more eloquent?
It sounded eloquent to me.
That's generous, thank you. So does anyone, and am I off base here? Commissioners, help me out. That we vote on saying we don't want to vote on this, right? Instead of just not voting on it, I was thinking we should have a record that we did so purposefully, and then we can give that back to DPW and planning saying, here's the record of our votes and here are our thoughts? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I think you could choose to not make a recommendation on it. You know, you could vote on that. You could vote on the others and say that, you know, you could vote that you don't want to make a recommendation on B7, right? Maybe that's what you want to do.
Yes, there's the language. Vote on not making a recommendation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because ultimately that's what you folks are doing. You're making recommendations, and then
Yes.
you know these other bodies are going to also see these things, and they'll go to city council with all of these recommendations,
Great.
and then city council will, you know, make their decisions based on all the recommendations from the committees, I think.
Thank you very much, Court.
Yeah.
So would anyone like to make a motion that the Disability Commission is not making a recommendation on the edits in B7?
Sorry, the only reason I've been quiet is because I'm just wondering if we might also want to include in the same vote, the section in the first section that mentions Transportation and Parking Commission in section A. Maybe we could vote basically to like to to um to not make a recommend to not sorry to not give our input basically on the sections relating to the Transportation and Parking Commission, which would include B7 and A. You know what I mean?
We could do it that way, combining. Yeah.
Since I feel like we're on the same page with both of those, I think.
Yep. Yeah, my linear brain was just working a different way, but that could make sense. I was going to recommend, actually we could do it that way, and then we can talk about how we want to handle the Disability Commission in A11. Okay.
Like
All
in
right.
a separate vote, you mean?
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha.
Okay. So does anyone want to make a motion for a vote on the Disability Commission not making a recommendation regarding the Transportation and Parking Commission? Oh God, I am getting lost in my.
You're doing great. That was perfect.
The words.
I'll make
okay.
a motion.
The essence that the Transportation and Parking Commission, in regards to whether their approval is needed in A11 and B7. Did that make sense, Court?
Yeah, I think so, right?
I think so, yeah. I'll make that motion.
Okay. So Councillor Dubs made that motion.
Okay.
And is there a second for that motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is that a second, Sydney, for that motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Sydney. Would anyone like the motion to be read back, which maybe Court can do if you're taking?
Yeah. Okay.
You mind
So-
reading it back just for clarity?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So a motion to not make a recommendation regarding whether TPC's approval is needed in sections A11 and B7.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so a roll call vote. Kathy Murray,
Yes.
Councillor Dubs,
Yes.
Sydney Meininger,
Yes.
Jenna Perna Elias,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. Great. Thank you. One down. All right, let's go to B1. And does anyone want to make a motion that the Disability Commission recommends, makes a recommendation to support the edits in B1?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Or
Yes.
what did you ask? Sorry.
Yes. So I'm wondering if someone will make a motion that we can vote on, that the Disability Commission recommends supporting the edits in B1.
I'll make a motion in support of B1.
Okay. Counselor Dubs makes a motion. Thank you. And a second for that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Kathy. Court, do you have it right in front of you just to read back?
Sure, yeah. So I have that the Disability Commission makes a recommendation to a motion from the Disability Commission make a recommendation to support the edits in section B1.
All right. So a roll call vote. Kathy Murray,
Yes.
Counselor Dubs,
Yes.
Sydney Meininger,
Yes.
Jenna Perna Elias,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, so then A11, when you have a chance to scroll up. Court.
Yep, sorry, there we go.
No. So and please jump in. I'm really feeling like I'd like more information about this bike lanes and or sidewalks.
Mhm.
And wondering if we can postpone the vote until table that part of, voting on that section until next month, until we hopefully get more information.
Mhm.
On
Oh,
that one. Yeah,
I
did you
just
just do
wanted to
that?
mention that there was in the chat, it looks like somebody from the public was hoping to offer a comment. I don't know if it's okay to do that or not, but
I just saw that. Thank you, Counselor
Yep.
Dunn. Yes, you can go ahead and make a comment. Chris, I believe it was.
Yes, Chris Stratton. I live in Florence behind the Ryan Rudd School. Wanted to address, well, at least specifically that bike lanes or sidewalks thing. As a general like bike lane design guide, you never build a bike lane where you're not going to build a sidewalk because it just results in people walking in the bike lane, which is not supposed to happen. That said, there are occasional exceptions, like I think DPW's plan near the high school right now on Elm Street going up the hill. They want to put a bike lane on both sides, which is kind of just designating the shoulder that's already there, but they don't feel they can fit a sidewalk on the north side of the hill given the slope. I think that's a very, very rare exception. That's a spot where a north side sidewalk wouldn't really access anything because the houses there don't really have their access from Elm. They have their accesses uphill from North Elm with like one exception. But yeah, just as a policy thing, generally bike lane design guides, you should never build a bike lane without a sidewalk because it will just be misused. So I'm kind of surprised to see the and or language there, and I almost wonder if maybe it's just a language like, word order mix up.
Great. Thank you so much for that input. I appreciate it. All right. So I'm wondering about tabling voting on that section, the bike lanes and or sidewalks when geometrically and financially feasible. If we can table that till next month and get some more information about it. Commissioners, anyone else feeling like that or feeling a different way? Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to table that until we can maybe get more information.
Okay. Great. So let's take a quick roll call vote on
Okay.
so is there a motion to
Oh, sorry.
no, sorry, no. Is there a motion to table voting until next month on the first part of A11 that includes bike lanes and or sidewalks when geometrically and financially feasible?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Debs. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kathy. And a roll call vote. Kathy Murray,
Yes.
Councilor Debs,
Yes.
Sydney Meininger,
Yes.
Jenna Purnell-Elias,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Thank you. So then the last consideration is the role of the Disability Commission when when either of those are not able to be built.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm pausing because I'm wondering if it's connected, like if it matters how we vote on the first one to then how we vote on the second one. You know, if this, then this situation, or if it makes sense to go ahead and vote on how we want the Disability Commission to be considered, whether it be for comment or for approval when potentially a bike lane or a sidewalk cannot be
Mm.
built during mill and overlay.
I would make the motion to I'm sorry. I'm forgetting. Can you repeat how you worded that?
Oh, sorry. No, actually, I'm just sitting here thinking.
Okay.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
I'm pausing because if we're tabling that first part,
Mhm.
and
Right.
how we vote on that, will that affect how we want to vote on the next part?
Mhm.
Whether the Disability Commission is on there for comment or for approval.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
um,
I think that if you're tabling it for more information, which for further clarification, you would probably want to table the whole thing, right? Like, and then have the discussion to include that part, the second part in that, you know, when it's back on when it's back up for consideration.
mhm.
But I mean,
Sydney, Kathy, Jenna, Councilor Debs, any thoughts on that?
I think the court suggestion is probably the best one. I think that's a good decision. At the same time, I would be ready. I feel ready to say that I would want the Disability Commission's approval, or I would want them to. I would want it to say for approval, but I also would agree that tabling it, the whole section, is probably the best idea until we have more information.
Mhm. Jenna, Sydney, Kathy, do you want to add to that before?
Yeah, I agree with Court and Jeremy. I feel like for clarity's sake, it makes the most sense to vote on it as a whole, but I agree that I don't think my vote would change based on like the language earlier in it.
Yep, got it. I think I'm on that same page as well. Okay, so then can we amend the last vote and do a superseded motion to table all of A11 until next month? And is there a motion? Does anyone want to make a motion to table A11 to next month? Sydney, I see your hand.
All emotion.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Counselor Dubs. All right. Whew. Thank you for that concentration, everybody. Really appreciate your work on that. All right. On to report from Counselor Dubs from City Council, the land of City Council.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, and can you unscreen share when you
Oh,
have?
sorry. Yeah. Here we go.
No. Thank
There we
you
go.
so much.
Yep.
I can take these off.
Because I'm writing stuff. Sorry.
Yeah,
Mhm.
multitasking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not a whole lot to update at the moment. The last time we talked, I mentioned the wheelchair lift at Strong Avenue needed some it had some safety issues. That issue has been solved, so there's no longer any safety issues. Now all that's being waited that they're waiting for is a new inspection now that they've made those changes. And unfortunately, it's just a long process because every time you make a change, you then have to like get it approved or inspected. So now, if you were to drive past there, it's a beautiful wheelchair lift. It's like all ready to go, but they just need it needs to be inspected. So that's where we're at with that. And then on the city council, currently we are discussing the capital improvement plan, which is basically like the city's it's the city's plan for capital projects for the next from FY26 to FY30. Um, and specifically relating to our commission, there's going to be $1 million going towards sidewalks for FY26, which is a great, which I've told you about before. It's because of the money from the bridge project that's going towards the sidewalk project. So there's that happening in FY26, and then FY27 through 30, there's an estimated $350,000 going towards sidewalks, which is an improvement from last year. It's $100,000 more than last year, going towards sidewalks for the next few years. And that's something that we're still discussing on the council, so it hasn't been voted on yet. But that's what we're doing now, and then after that, we'll be voting on the full budget for the city, which will I'll update you on that too when that's happening. So yeah, that's basically all I've got right now.
Fantastic. Great
Yeah.
news. Thank you for your work.
Of course.
If you ever need commissioners, or if it would be helpful for commissioners to go to public comment during that process, is there a way for you to let us know that?
Absolutely, yeah. I could just like reach out to you, and then you or Keith,
Yeah.
and he could let the other counselors know. And yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you for that suggestion.
Oh, yeah.
Because that will help a lot if when we're voting on things, especially sidewalks or anything accessibility related. If anybody comes and gives public comment, that's very helpful.
Great.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
So we are headed to the follow-up on the PSA, and I'm realizing, oh, and thank you, Chris, for raising your hand. I realized I didn't do this with the number 4 on the agenda item, asking if there is public comment on this agenda item before we start. So Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to comment to that for a minute. Obviously, having sidewalks that are passable are very, very important. And there's sort of a regretful reality in our society that we plow streets with public money, but we kind of push sidewalk clearance off on property owners, which kind of implicitly says that we don't take it as seriously as a municipality. I mean, we have an ordinance that, the property owner shall clear it, but we don't spend the public money on that. We only spend public money on the space for cars, which is sort of an inherent deprioritization. And on a busy street, that is kind of necessity, that split. I wish that as a city, we would look more at many of our residential streets, and we would look at whether there are cases where a European model, like the Dutch living street concept, a Woonerf, where the street itself is considered space for people, and we're not pushing people off the street to reserve it for cars. My neighborhood behind the Ryan Road School, we have these beautiful wide streets that you would think people would drive like